Hi, Marie here. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm excited to share with you my 5 least favorite houses. Yeah, these ones I just don't get on with. I may like one fragrance from the collection, but overall they just don't interest me. So I'm going to share with you my thoughts and why. And before I get started, if you haven't subscribed, just go ahead and hit that button. Join the Weird and Wonderful family. It would be amazing to have you part of the community. And without further ado, let's get into this. I know that some of you are gonna love these brads. That's part of the fun. If you love them, keep loving them. I think that's great. It's called subjectivity. Everything in perfume to me is uber subjective. So I thought I would rank them in order of dislike. The first one in number 5 would be Marc Jacobs. The reason why it was in number 5 was because I actually like one of the fragrances, which is Decadence. I think it's a beautiful fragrance. It's a green vanilla. It took me a long time to actually appreciate it, but now that I do, I really love it. Some people hate the smell of it because for some reason they get the smell of pickles in it, and I am so thankful that I am not one of them. I don't notice pickles. I'm so thankful that when people said pickle that I didn't automatically pick up the pickle, because that would have been heartbreaking. And so I'm really sorry to even mention the pickle. In fact, I think I shouldn't have mentioned the fact that some people notice pickles and Decadence, although it's kind of out there and just a known thing. So anyway, if now you smell pickles, I apologize, but I don't, and I'm really grateful for that. Now, other than that, I just do not like the bottles. So, well, actually, I don't like the fragrances either. So there's the whole Daisy line. I've talked about it before. It doesn't really make sense to me. There's always 3 in the collection. Someone explained it to me and had an excellent explanation. In fact, I think it was Julie from Quebec. If it was you, like put the explanation again in the thing. I think there's a fresh one, there's a sweeter one, whatever. So I like the concept of having different types of fragrances for different people. But I just am not a huge fan of the majority of those bottles. So the big, huge daisy, the 3 big daisies, hate that style of bottle. I do like the bottle that has the little daisies all over it. I think that's a nice bottle. Overall, the fragrances in that line are just really lackluster to me. There's the Dot collection. Again, I think that the bottles are tacky. The scents to me are lackluster. Like, they're nice enough. Like, none of them are terrible smells, but to me, they're just unremarkable. And then there's the Perfect line. There's Perfect and Perfect Intense. That is probably my least favorite bottle out of all of them. I hate the way that bottle looks. It's just a bulbous, horrible top with way too much chaos on it. I don't understand it. I guess that's the thing. I don't get the bottles, but people love them. And people love the Perfect Intense especially. Like, they love that fragrance. For me, again, it's just kind of mass appealing, and I don't find it remarkable. So it's not that I think it's bad. I don't think any of the fragrances are bad in this collection or like horrible, but they just don't speak to me on any sort of level. Like, I want perfume to move me, man, and none of those do. So still really love Decadence. And, you know, honestly, Decadence to me was one of those fragrances where when I first smelt it, like my nose, like literally, like my lips started to curl because the greenness, I couldn't get around it. But it's one of those fragrances similar to Black Orchid where I love to hate it. Like, you know, every once in a while I'd go in and smell it, my lip would kind of curl because I was so horrified by it, and then I somehow fell in love with it. So Decadence, I loved to hate it, and then I ended up loving it. So it's a winner. It's in number 5, at Marc Jacobs in number 5, simply because I love that fragrance, but the rest of them, mediocre, and I just cannot get behind the bottle concepts. I'm a traditionalist overall when it comes to bottles and like simpler styles. So for that reason, it's a number 5 spot. Coming in number 4 is Versace. I don't mind Crystal Noir. So I have Crystal Noir. I love the way it smells. I think it's sexy. I don't like it on myself. I feel like it's a little too masculine. I have a mini of Dylan Blue. I don't mind that fragrance either. I love the Dylan Blue bottles. So Blue Turquoise or Dylan Turquoise, Dylan Blue. I think there's a Dylan purple out now. I love the way they designed that bottle. I don't mind the fragrance, but to me it's kind of a clean soapy fragrance, at least Dylan Blue and Turquoise. It's not really my vibe, so I don't mind the fragrance. I wouldn't mind smelling on someone else. I actually like that bottle, and you know, it's an okay fragrance. I like Crystal Noir, but other than that, I don't like any of the Crystal line other than Crystal Noir. To me, again, they're just mass appealing, kind of sweet, a little bit soapy, shampoo-y kind of vibe. They just don't do anything for me, and I hate the bottles. So I don't like the bottles on the Crystal line. Bright Crystal, like the yellow, the pink, whatever other colors they have, I just don't like them, and I find them to be kind of more soapy, fruity than anything, and to me that's just your typical designer smell. Dime a dozen. They just don't move me in any capacity. Plus they're too clean. I'm not a clean fragrance girl. I like a little bit I like a little bit of skank. I can't help it. Love a little bit of sexiness in my fragrance, and none of the ones that I've smelled so far really move me. They're all just too clean, soapy, sweet, and boring to me. Now coming in at number 3 are Tory Burch fragrances. Now it's not like I've explored the line a whole lot. I actually don't mind the look of the bottle. I just have not been a fan of any of the smells. So the Tory Burch kind of, like from what I've smelled, they smell a little bit more woody, spicy, but almost a little bit aftershave-y feel to me. So that woody component, I just don't get on with it. They smell very, again, there's a fresh component somehow to them, in my opinion. And I'm just not a fan. Other than that, like, I don't mind the bottles on them. I've sniffed them several times. Whenever I see a Tory Burch out, I'll usually give it a sniff to see if I've changed my mind. But really, there's nothing in that line. I don't think it's a huge line, but nothing that I've smelt of Tory Burch I've got on with or even wanted to spray on my skin. So it's number 3. In number 2 spot is Bulgari. Now, first of all, I don't understand the name BV Bulgari. So I'm like, is it Bulgari? I think it's Bulgari. Is it Bulgari? Like, I don't know. So that kind of stresses me out. But overall, like, I've smelled Parfum. I think it's called Parfum. I didn't mind that one, but it didn't like knock my socks off. And then the biggest knock against Bulgari are those Omnia perfumes. So I have yet to smell one that I loved. Now, my good friend Lori, she loves Omnia Coral. And I totally get it. Like, it's sweet, kind of fresh, clean. But again, I think the biggest thing is these companies that put out these kind of fresh, soapy, clean, sweet fragrances. That's not my vibe, so I don't really enjoy them. Plus, I just hate the look of those Omnia bottles. So they're colorful, but they're just kind of bulbous. They look like knots. I don't like the bottles, and I'm not a fan of the fragrances either. Like, they just feel thin, one-dimensional, unimaginative, and for that reason, Bulgari is number 2 spot. In number 1 spot as my least favorite line of fragrances comes from Estee Lauder. Now, you know, the kind of iconic makeup brands are Estee Lauder, Elizabeth Arden, and Lancome. Now, when I was growing up, those were the 3 kind of massive cosmetic brands. So they all have their own line of fragrances. Love, love, love Lancome. It's one of my top favorite fragrance houses. They have such a great lineup of fragrances. Really enjoy Elizabeth Arden, but Estee Lauder, to me, they just fall flat. Now, I know that there's some really iconic fragrances in Estee Lauder, such as Cinnabar. I've smelt it. I almost like it with that cinnamon, but to me it just smells so dated. And then there's the Youth Dew line, which I can't vibe with. There's their Beautiful line. Like, they have so many fragrances, and all of them to me smell slightly dated. Like, they've got their Muse line. I think that's kind of a newer line for them. They all smell rather dated, typical kind of just designer, like unremarkable. Again, that's the word. Now, Cinnabar, That's a little bit different and kind of a little bit special from that perspective, but to me it just smells too dated for my tastes. And then recently Estee Lauder launched a huge luxury fragrance collection. They've got a ton of them, and some of them are nice. They're a little bit more interesting than kind of the typical ones that are out there. They're a little bit more current. The style of the bottle is really nice, but when I smell the fragrances, there's nothing in any of that line that makes me go, wow, I've got to have it. Like, they're just okay. So for me, Estee Lauder, love their makeup, don't love their fragrances at all. I really appreciate their luxury fragrance collection that they've released. Like, I'm just looking here. It's got Blushing Sands, Desert Eden, Dream Dusk, Infinite Sky, Oasis Dawn, Paradise Moon, Radiant Mirage, Sensuous Stars, Tender Light. So they're all kind of the new fragrances. They focus on a couple different notes as the stars. So I appreciate the effort and the thought behind the fragrances, but none of them really move me in any sort of a way. So for me, that is my least favorite brand. I never get excited about Estee Lauder fragrances. If they come out, like, I'll sniff it, but I've yet to find one that really spoke to me in any sort of a way. That said, Estee Lauder as a brand owns so many amazing companies. Like Tom Ford is under that umbrella. So like love a lot of the, I think Tom Ford, Mac, Too Faced, there's so many brands that are under the Estee Lauder umbrella. That, like Clinique, I like some of the Clinique fragrances. So there's lots of fragrances under their main umbrella. Michael Kors, you know, different ones like that that are in that umbrella. So love lots of those houses, but as far as Estee Lauder's actual fragrance line, never been a fan. And so that is it. Those are my least favorite fragrance houses. You know, there's a few others. I'm realizing as I talked that a lot of it has to do with bottles. The Estee Lauder one, it's their fragrances. I just don't get on with them. They just, whatever. So, like, a lot of them, it has to do with their fragrances, but if their bottles are freaky and weird, I'm out. So like bright crystal bottles, Omnia crystal bottles, the Marc Jacobs bottles, all of them are weird and lame, and I'm just not a fan. So definitely the bottles play a huge part for me. Interesting. What about you? What are your least favorite houses? Feel free to weigh in the comments. And other than that, I hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk to you soon.